Okay, greetings, good morning. Okay, this is Mr. Israel Etem, a full stack developer, okay, and also a coding instructor. Now, first, I'll present myself as a front end and back end developer. So, you know, when we talk about full stack, we're talking about an expertise with the front end and an expertise with the back end, so have the full stack structure. Okay, so I'm proficient with main stack, that's MongoDB Express, React, and Node.js. Also use stack like main stack, that is MongoDB Express, Angular, and Node. Okay, so I also use PHP, that is Hypertext Pro preprocessor, and Python. So in Python, I do a lot of machine learning and building ChatGPT. I'll run down to this lesson. What we'll be learning here is HTML. So now, what is HTML? So first, we'll define HTML. We'll talk about HTML structure as it applies to web development, and we'll talk about tags. What are tags? We'll talk about different tags found in HTML. Then we'll talk also about the content, like elements that you can use in HTML. So now let's kickstart and go into the ball already. Okay, so now the first thing we'll talk about now is the HTML. Now, what is HTML? First, the full meaning of HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. What did I say? Hypertext Markup Language. Okay, so that's the full meaning of HTML first. Then the second is that it is a programming language. It gives the web the structure. So whenever you open google.com, you open Wikipedia, the structure you see there, where you see the logo, Wikipedia, you see the content, table of contents, then you see the body and all of that. So that is HTML structure. It gives the structure to your web. Now we have other things that makes up the web page, like the CSS and other programming languages. So now, but what gives it that structure you see whenever you scroll down, you check, okay, I open this site, and the arrangement, maybe with your phone or with your laptop, it is the HTML that's responsible for that. You understand? Okay, so now let's go into what this HTML carries. Okay, now the first thing it carries are tags. So now we have what we call tag. We have what we call the opening tag, and we have what we call the closing tag. We have what we call the opening tag, and we have what we call the closing tag. Okay, so it looks like this. Okay, now when we talk about opening and closing tag, what do they really mean? Okay, they mean what you use to open your content and close. Now, whenever you are programming, you must know that they have their rules, just the same way you do in English language. You know, whenever you're phrasing, you write your phrasing, you use commas and all of that. Now, when you are ending your phrase, you end with full stop. Okay, same thing with programming. So whenever you want to start, it must have an opening tag. So that's where programming is a kind of different from English, although we have what we call paragraph in English that helps you to know, okay, this is where my sentence starts. Okay, so in programming, what helps us to know that, okay, this is where your coding starts is what we call the opening tag. So the opening tag. Okay, so now what helps us to know that, okay, this code has come to an end is closing tag. Is that okay? Okay, so now we move on to the next thing we call elements. Okay, now elements help us to know that, okay, this is a paragraph, this is a table, this is an order list, this is an order list, and so on. Okay, this is your head, this is the title. So all those things are elements, and we have tons of elements. You can't cram all of them. So what we use as programmers, we use a site called W3 School. Now we use there as whatever you want, or you just go on Google. If you feel that searching through W 3 school would take time. You just Google what you need. Example, maybe I want to work on a floating table to the right. Now I'll just Google how to floating table on HTML. So it will just bring out the code. Do you understand? So that is how to write on with your lesson. Do you understand? Okay, so now we move on. The next thing we talk about now is HTML structure. HTML structure. Okay, so now HTML structure has some certain content that make it HTML. Okay, so first is your doc type HTML. It has when you get into when you get into when you get into CSS, you know more about void element. Okay, now this doc type is what we call void element. Void element. Now these void elements, they have just one tag. They don't have opening and closing tag. So the doc type is one of them. So you start your code with a doc type, capital letter doc type, then HTML small letter. You close your parentheses, that's with your greater than sign. Okay, so that's how you start your HTML structure. Now, why this doc type HTML first? Now, this doc type helps the web to identify that this is a documented type of HTML. That's the first code. Okay, now we move on to the next one, is your HTML. Is your HTML. Now, this HTML houses everything that makes it HTML. So you see now we have HTML opening tag and we have HTML closing tag. Now the next structure you have is the head section. The head section. The head section. Now this head section houses what you don't want to be displayed on the body. Now when you open google.com, you see that small write-up about Google on the top of your browser, not the body. You just see Google or the Google sign. Okay, that is where you put your head. That's where you put the head section. And the only thing that can be displayed on the head section is the title. The only thing that can be displayed on the head section is the title. Every other content won't be seen on your browser except you go into your inspection. Let's not talk about that. That is advanced class. So let's write on with the beginners class. Okay, so now we have the only content in the head that is displayed on your screen when you open your browser is the title. So we move on to the title. Okay, let's say first time with HTML. So this is a content for the head. Now the next is the body. The body, it has an opening and closing tag too. Now this is where you put whatever you want anyone to see around the world. When you search how to write a paragraph, now the content you see there or the input box where you type in how to, all those things are what you put in the body section, what you put in the body tag. Okay, so now let's start. Let's say for example we want to start with H1. Let's say is coding really fun? Really fun. Is coding really fun? Okay, so let's take that as our first heading. Now in H, this is an element in HTML. This H here is an element. It stands for header. Now we have different font sizes for the heading. We have H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Now the higher the number, the lower the font size. The greater the number of heading, the lower the font size. What do I mean? H1 carries the biggest font in heading. So if I have H2, let's apply H2 so you can see the effect. Okay, I do not really know what I am doing here. Okay, so let's say that is our second heading. Okay, now let's move on to the third heading. Let's move on to the third heading. Okay, is this going to be easy? Okay, so that's the third heading. Okay, the next one, let's go H4 while this. Okay, so H5, I will tell my mama that coding was fun. So now let's add up H5. I would really like to continue learning programming. Okay, so now we have this as our content. Let's say H1, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. Okay, so let's open in a browser so that you see how it is. Okay, so now this is heading. This is just one element. We have tons of elements. Now we have let's say we have the paragraph, we have paragraph. So in paragraph, it helps you to put a paragraph also has opening and closing tag. It has opening and closing tag. So the first time I was told, okay, so let's just showcase this first. Okay, so this is how they display. You see, this H1, the first font, the second font size, H2, H3, H4, H5, H6. So you see the degrading in font size. So that is the fun thing about your heading. So you can choose whichever you want to go with. Now we have the next thing, paragraph. We're working on paragraph. We said the first time I was told about programming, I thought it was very difficult. Until I met this lesson. Woo! So that's it. So let's save it, and ta-da! We see it on our content page. So we have here the first time I was told about programming, I thought it was very difficult until I met this lesson. Okay, so now you see whatever you put in your HTML. So you see now we are building a website already. So the next question you ask is, why is it not as beautiful as other sites I see? Okay, now we have what we call CSS, cascading style sheet. We have Sass, we have Tailwind, we have a lot of styling application. We have Bootstrap. Okay, so now all those help us to style it. Don't worry, in our next lesson we'll talk about that. So we have a lot of, so let's just put in one more element, input box. Then in this input box, let's put okay, no, let's not go into input. Let's just put button. Okay, so click me. So we have button, click me. So you just see it. click me. Okay, so that is all about uh, working with your HTML. Any content you want to see that you do not really understand, just head on to Google and it will give you. There is nothing about programming. Programming is easy, it's super simple, and this is just like the first and simplest programming language. As far as I'm concerned, this is the first and simplest programming language. Then every other one has to do with your logical reasoning, and of which you have to understand a lot of things before you go into that. You have to understand your logic and all of that. Okay, so thank you for staying with us and learning with us. Goodbye.